Hello and welcome everybody to another edition of the Saturdays are for the Byzantines podcast. My name is Professor Wren here. I am your host. And today, before we do that, if you found this video, please make sure to give it a like, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and hit the notification bell so you never miss another video. If you are listening on Apple Podcasts or Google Play, please also make sure to give us a follow. And if you can, give us a 5-star review. Now, what I wanted to focus on today, this is not really related to the topic of our main lecture series here. We're diverting a little bit from Justinian because I kind of wanted to talk today about one of my favorite topics in the history of Eastern Christianity, which is the Liturgy of St. James. Now, for those of you who know anything about the Eastern Orthodox Church or Eastern Catholicism, you probably have heard of, and I've certainly mentioned on this show, the Liturgy of St. John Chrysostom, which is probably the best known Eastern liturgy, either Catholic or Orthodox, because it's used in both the Eastern Rite Catholic churches and in the Eastern Orthodox churches. But the Liturgy of St. James is a little different, and I would say not as well known, but it's too bad that it's not as well known because it is in fact the oldest known form of liturgy that we have. Now, it's called the Liturgy of St. James because it is attributed to St. James, who is also sometimes called the brother of the Lord. Now, let's not confuse him with, this was James in sometimes among the apostles, he's referred to as James the Lesser. There was James the Greater, who was also called James the son of Zebedee. But you have this interesting other James in the group of the apostles called James the brother of the Lord. Now, this, in my opinion, some people may disagree, but I believe that this means that James was, in all likelihood, a stepbrother to Jesus. This is also, we get this from the Gospel of James, or the Proto-Evangelium of James, it is not in the Bible. It is an apocryphal book. However, it does say that when Joseph marries Jesus, or doesn't marry his own son. When Joseph marries Mary, he is a bit of an older man at this point in time. Now, some people will try to say that he was like a very old man. I don't think that needs to be the case. And that Joseph had been widowed, he had a previous marriage and had children in that previous marriage. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that he has to be 50 or 60 years old. I mean, you could be in your certainly back in ancient times, it would not be outrageous to hear of a 35-year-old man who was widowed with children. Women frequently died during childbirth in the ancient world. But anyway, I do think I am of the belief that this James, the brother of the Lord, is in fact a son of Joseph from a previous marriage before he's married to Mary. And the Gospels do talk at other points in time about Jesus's brothers and sisters. Now, you could take that to mean like brothers and sisters in faith and fellowship and all that. I think it's the case that some of these brothers and sisters are actually are members of his actual family, again, by Joseph from a previous marriage. Now, some people do trace the Liturgy of St. James back to the 4th century, but this just means that the 4th century is the earliest written record that we have of it. It does not necessarily disprove that it doesn't come directly from St. James, the brother of the Lord himself, which I think I like cool historical stories. I don't like these stories where they say, well, it's attributed to this person, but he didn't actually have anything to do with it. No, come on. Let's have a little fun here, guys. Just because, I mean, they didn't write it down one day and then, they didn't write it down on Saturday night and then start using the liturgy Sunday morning, right? That's typically not how these things work. Usually they're around for a while before that, and then someone thinks to write it down because they say, oh, this is important. We've been doing it for a long time. Let's write it down so we can remember it and preserve it for future generations. Now, St. James, the brother of the Lord, was a leader of the church in Jerusalem. I believe the leader of the church in Jerusalem. as the apostles go out during we read about this during the Acts of the Apostles. James stays behind in Jerusalem, and it says that he is going to minister to the circumcised, which means the Jews, and that other apostles like Paul wasn't in the Paul's an honorary apostle, but Paul was going to minister to the uncircumcised, which means the Gentiles. And St. James does preside over the first council of Jerusalem, where one of the main things they were talking about was whether or not Gentile converts to Christianity had to become circumcised before, or in order for them to convert to Christianity, which basically all of the apostles at the council said no. Fortunately so for all of those people who were converting into the church at the time, because going through circumcision as an adult would not be fun. I'm sure it's not fun as a baby either, but you don't really remember it. Anyway, but so James presided over that council, and like I said, he agreed with Paul and Peter and all of them to not require that for converts to Christianity. Now, the St. James liturgy is very commonly celebrated on the feast day of St. James, which is October 23rd. It is also celebrated in Jerusalem on a pretty regular basis, because again, this goes back to and originates from Jerusalem, or at least is attributed to St. James, again, the brother of the Lord who was in charge of the church in Jerusalem in the early days of the church. It's also used, it says, in the Maronite rite as well. This is one of the two Syrian rites in the Eastern Catholic Church. There's the Melkite rite, which uses the Chrysostom liturgy, and then also the Maronite rite, which uses in some cases, uses the Liturgy of St. James. There's some good videos on YouTube here on our wonderful website of YouTube of the Liturgy of St. James. One is a 4-minute video clip. I'll try to post links to both of these in the description of this video so you guys can watch them yourselves. They are really cool. One of them is like a 4-minute video, and it comes from Jordan. The one thing about that video is that the altar in that church has been moved out of the sanctuary. It's been moved from behind the iconostasis to in front of the iconostasis. For those of you who don't know, the iconostasis is a wall of icons, which is used in an Eastern Rite church. In Western Rite churches, there used to be altar screens, it was basically like a screen, but that was kind of behind the altar rail, and it separated the altar from the masses, from the congregation, basically. Not that it wasn't not that you couldn't see through it, but it was still there. The same with the iconostasis. You can see through it. There are doors which open, and then you can see the altar there. Now, I'll post a second video, which is a much longer video. It's a full Liturgy of St. James. It's from Russia. I have it up here in front of me. It is from the, Orthodox Divine Liturgy according to Apostle James, celebrated in St. Petersburg Orthodox Seminary. So I'll post that as well. That has the more traditional setup of the altar behind the iconostasis. And so, I mean, both of them are really interesting to watch, but you can get a taste of, apparently, some of the churches decided when the Catholic Church moved our worship from the priest facing the altar to facing the people. Some of these Eastern churches decided to go along with that as well. But either way, I think the Liturgy of St. James is it's very fascinating to watch, and it's really cool. At least, as coming from a Catholic perspective, that this could very well be, a very similar way that the apostles had their masses, had their liturgy, and that it's, I mean, certainly there are some changes that occur over the centuries, but the idea that it's close enough to what it was 2,000 years ago is really cool to see that something like that has been preserved since the very beginning. So that's really all I have for you guys today. Like I said, I would recommend watching. I'll post both of the links to those videos in the description. I think they're worth the watch. Although, I mean, I'm not saying you have to watch the entire 2-hour liturgy from from the Russian one, but you know, I mean, I don't watch the 2-hour one. I just jump around, but it's still really cool. So if you made it this far in the video, please make sure to give us a like, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and hit the notification bell so that you never miss another episode. If you are listening on Apple Podcast, Google Play, or any other podcast platforms, please make sure to give us a follow, as well as a 5-star review if you can. We are also on Facebook and Instagram. You can check us out there at Professor Wren on both Facebook and Instagram, where I post updates to the show and other fun things about history that I like to share with you guys. So with that being said, that's really all I have for you today, and I'll see y'all next time.